So in this piece I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of truth in relation to mindfulness. We have my truth and we have the truth. Whenever I think of the term the truth, I'm always reminded of a story my father-in-law told me many years ago. He was studying philosophy and theology when he retired, and so he used to speak to me quite a lot about the subject. At one particular time we were talking about the idea of truth, and he mentioned a story, and it goes like this. There's a guy driving down the road, and he is seen to be waving his hand around quite violently, and he crashes the car. So the police show up and they're trying to find out what happened. So they speak to one witness on one side of the road, and he says, well, look, I saw the guy, and it looked like he was waving to somebody. He wasn't paying attention to the road. He was waving. It looked like he was waving to somebody he knew, and he crashed the car. And then the police question another witness on the other side of the road, and he says, oh, I saw him, and I don't think he was waving at somebody. I think he was shaking his fist at someone. He looked aggressive. He looked angry through the glass, and he was shaking that hand around quite in an aggressive manner, and I don't think he was paying attention to the road, and he crashed the car. And then the police go and they speak to the man in the car, and he says, no, he said, I was driving along, the window was open and a bee flew into the car, and I'm allergic to bees, and so I was swiping at the bee trying to get it out of the car, and I lost control and I crashed. The importance of this story is that for each of these three people there was a different, what they might refer to as their truth, their perspective. The reality of the situation was very, very different. And we see this bringing of the my truth to certain situations. We see it quite a lot when we see people talking about politics. Politics is a particularly interesting one because people tend to take very strong opinions. They take very diverse and different approaches to the same topic depending on what side of politics they're coming from. So for an example, during an election, you have people becoming very, very polarized, deciding on what their truth is. So they tend to follow one particular perspective, one particular version of the news. So the news comes to them. But unfortunately, the news is not news anymore. If it ever was, I don't know. But it certainly isn't news anymore. It comes with an opinion. It comes from a political side of the room, if you will, with a certain colouring. And if we only ever listen to one side of the news, then one side of the story, what we get is one particular group identity with what they believe to be the truth. If you question the other side, you get the other group's identity with the truth. And unless you're able to step back and view the facts and more closely examine what the actual truth might be, you will never, ever, ever find peace within this political divide. You will always be arguing not from the perspective of the actual truth, but you will only ever be arguing from the perspective of the perceived truth from your side of the argument. Now, when we take this hot topic of politics and the idea of the truth, and we bring that then into mindfulness, we have a similar sort of argument that goes on within our own minds all the time. Mindfulness is about being present in the moment. It's very much about the truth of that moment, where the mind has a tendency to live from the past or live from the future. It has no real understanding of the moment, because in the moment, for example, you may simply be sitting in a chair, but the mind has no interest in you sitting in a chair. It only has an interest in thinking. So while you're sitting in the chair, it will bring stuff from your past into the mind. It will bring stuff from the future, perceived future, into the mind. And it will create scenarios based on this combination of the past and the future. And it will build them on its, you could almost say, its political hue, its political view of the world. It has one particular side, one particular viewpoint that it tends to take with it, which it has developed over long periods of time, really from the moment of birth and beforehand, even before birth, when the body starts to take in information around it. Depending on its experiences as it takes that information in, it develops different perspectives, which it then views the current living situation through. If I can give you an example, let's say something bad has something really bad. Let's say you're losing your home. And let's say you're in the bank and you're sitting down in a chair in a waiting room before you go into the room, and you're going to sign the papers that basically hands the house back over to the bank. Now, while you're sitting in that chair, depending on what's happened to you before, you may have different things going through your mind. If you have survived financial chaos before and come out only to strive and go forward again, then perhaps you are mildly worried, or perhaps you're annoyed, or perhaps you're deeply worried, but you still have that idea of hope. Perhaps everything you've ever done financially in the past has gone wrong. Nothing has ever turned out right. In which case you may be sitting there feeling great dread, a real sense of desperation before you go in. Now, both of those situations are created by the mind. Both of them create a different reality for you at that time. But here's the thing, neither of them are actually true. For at that moment, while sitting in that chair, all you are doing is sitting in that chair. Whatever has happened before has happened. Whatever is going to happen in the future has yet to happen. So, while it might be difficult, I would say very difficult in fact, there is no reason why you cannot find a perfect moment of peace and calm while you're sitting in that chair. Because while you're sitting in that chair, that is the only moment that actually exists. Whatever happened before that led to you losing the house, that's gone. That no longer exists. Whatever's going to happen when you walk through that door and sign those papers, whatever happens when you leave the bank afterwards, that has not happened yet. It is only a creation in your own mind. It does not mean that it's not going to happen, but what it does mean is that this is the only moment that exists. The moment while you're sitting in the chair, in the waiting room, and in that moment, there is nothing that is causing you harm. So anything you feel, whether it's depression, deep upset, or even mild irritation because you think, oh, I'll survive this, no problem. Whatever those feelings are, they are created entirely from the mind. And when we practice mindfulness, what we do is we practice letting go of the past and the future. Not so that we're not affected by them, but so that we don't have to relive them in this moment. So we take time to relive the past and we take time to deal with the future. But we also take time simply to be in the now, to release ourselves from the stress that the mind creates within the body when we're sitting in that chair in that waiting room, when there is nothing threatening us in that chair, in that waiting room, in that given moment. It is a good idea when we're practicing mindfulness to become aware of what our mind is doing at any given time. What is your mind thinking about? Is it reliving some event from the past? Is it creating some dreamed up future event? And if occasionally you can see if you can just let go of both and find happiness and contentment simply in this moment. We often see this when people are trying to go after a goal, for example, perhaps you're a young lawyer and you're intent on making partner, and so happiness for you exists only when you become partner. And therefore, all your attention is on some future event. But in order to become a partner quicker, what you need to do is focus on the thing you are doing right now, whatever that case is, whatever that job is, whether it's intellectually stimulating or not. Young lawyers do a lot of paperwork, a lot of boring research and digging around for facts. So what they need to do is to give all their attention to what they're doing in that moment, to enjoy the simple tasks while still going after the goal. If your focus is only ever on the goal, then the current work or job can become a deep source of suffering because it is not the desired goal. But if you can learn to give yourself fully, with practice, it's quite easy, give yourself fully to the task that you're doing, to do it as best you can and to enjoy the process, whatever that process is, then you will get to the goal that you want to get to. You will get there in a content and happy state, and you will enjoy it more when you actually get there. So it's important to, when we're being mindful, it's important to understand that when we are mindful of the current situation, whether we're sitting in a chair doing nothing, whether we're doing a simple task that will bring us one step closer to a greater goal, that we need to give ourselves to that moment, and that by being mindful does not mean that we do not learn from the past, nor does it mean that we cannot set goals and create better futures. But what it does mean is that we can enjoy the moment we're living in now. If you enjoy these mindfulness contemplation points, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, or if you wish to do our 10-minute free meditations, our mindful meditations, then you'll find a link below that will take you to the free meditation course